Something is going seriously wrong. Take a good look at this image. For decades, researchers have found the same pattern across countries and cultures. Young people tend to be relatively happy. Happiness then declines into midlife, reaching its lowest point around the so-called midlife crisis, and then steadily rises again. Research showing this effect has been replicated over 600 times. But recently, this curve has changed. New research on well-being data from 44 different countries has shown a sharp decline in well-being for one age group: young people. In fact, their well-being is now worse than that of any other age group. Let me show you another graph. Take a look at the green line first. As you can see, life satisfaction for young people is now the lowest, and the line steadily goes up. The midlife crisis has become a little stagnation in the way to happiness, instead of our most difficult time. On the other hand, if we look at the blue line, we see that the amount of young people with depression is way higher than in all other age groups. Now, this is a massive shift, and it begs the question: what on earth is going on? Well, for starters, research by Blanchflower and Bryson indicates that this change started somewhere around 2014 to 2017. So let's shift our attention to another major societal change that happened in those years. We need to talk about the book The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. In this book, Jonathan Haidt describes two developments that he believes are central to the decline of well-being in our youth. The first is the decline of the play-based childhood, and the second is the rise of the phone-based childhood. And these two developments are to be seen together. As screen usage increased, play decreased. Now, critics often argue that the evidence here is merely correlational. And they have a point. It's very difficult to show a causal link between different societal changes. Interestingly, social media companies themselves seem to think that the causal link is very real. For example, according to US court filings, Meta buried internal evidence showing causal harm from its platforms. Really? In 2020, Meta scientists ran an internal experiment known as Project Mercury. They studied what would happen if users stopped using Facebook for just 1 week. And they found that people who stopped using Facebook for a week reported lower feelings of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and social comparison. Now again, this is not speculation. These findings come from Meta's own internal documents. And instead of changing their algorithm or seeing what about their platforms was actually making us depressed, they did a very different thing. Meta cancelled Project Mercury. Importantly, the research by Jonathan Haidt also shows that a high screen time does not affect everybody in the same way, and that there are large differences between groups. For girls, social media platforms like Instagram seem to be particularly damaging. Constant exposure to filtered, edited, and idealized images intensifies social comparison during a critical period of development. For boys, the pattern often looks different. Excessive gaming and online pornography are linked to social withdrawal and loneliness, replacing real-world relationships with isolated digital substitutes. And in that sense, it also becomes more logical why young men that feel isolated and frustrated are also drawn towards the manosphere. Now, if we take these platforms at face value, it becomes very clear that these are not safe environments for children. And as I said, this does not only apply to social media, it also applies to excessive gaming and pornography. These platforms all have one or multiple of the following features. Firstly, they absorb enormous amounts of time, often at the expense of real-world social connection. Secondly, they constantly invite unhealthy comparison with people who appear happier, more successful, or more attractive. Third, many expose young users to violent, sexualized, or highly divisive content. And fourth, they are designed to continuously stimulate developing reward systems, making sustained focus almost impossible. This is not a healthy environment for anybody, let alone children, those whose brains are still developing. Now that we know what the problem is, we need to think about what to do about it. Jonathan Haidt proposes different solutions that could help with this problem. And these solutions are dividable on 3 different levels: family, community, and society. On a family level, his core recommendation is delaying exposure. No smartphones before high school, no social media before 16, and a deliberate return to unsupervised real-world play, where children learn resilience through manageable risk rather than constant adult mediation. But individual families can only do so much. At the community level, Haidt argues that norms must shift collectively. Schools and parent groups can coordinate to implement fully phone-free schools and rebuild local institutions that give adolescents meaningful offline forms of belonging. And at the societal level, Haidt argues that regulation is unavoidable when children are exposed to systems intentionally engineered to be addictive. His proposals include enforceable age verification, limits on algorithmic targeting of minors, and legal accountability for platforms that knowingly cause harm. Now, of course, some of these proposals are controversial, especially the ones surrounding regulation for privacy concerns, for example. And it's important to take into account that these are merely proposals. If there are any better ones, these should be explored and implemented. But one thing is for sure, we cannot do nothing. We are currently failing the youth. Children cannot simply learn to responsibly use platforms that are made to retain their attention and to destroy their attention spans. It is simply unrealistic, and therefore protecting children against the algorithms is not a radical position. It is time to protect our youth in an attempt to restore the U-curve of happiness. Thank you for watching. If there are any things that you agree with or you disagree with in this video, please let me know in the comments. If you have any alternatives for interventions, please also leave a comment. I would really like to hear it. Leave a like if you enjoyed and share this video with whoever might need to hear this message as well. And finally, the sources are in the description.